Australian Aviation Podcast, the official podcast of Australian Aviation, unpacking the latest insights, developments and issues impacting Australia's aviation sector.
Hello and welcome to the Australian Aviation Podcast. I am Jake Nelson, and long-time listeners or viewers of the podcast might remember that way back in 2019, in the before times, we had a podcast with a special guest, Captain Michelle Huntington, who was at the time with Virgin Australia. Now, it's been 6 years. There's been a lot of changes, but Michelle is here with us again to speak about her career and her new book, Lady MacGyver. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks, Jake.
So, Michelle, just to start with, last time we spoke to you in 2019, you were flying with Virgin. You were a Virgin captain. You had ambitions to fly a Virgin 777, as I recall, which shows how much things have changed. Can you catch us up a bit on what you've been doing since you left Virgin?
Sure. So with COVID in 2020, I accepted a redundancy. And then since then, I have been touring globally, giving keynote speeches, motivational speeches on what it's like to be a pilot, a lot of the lessons, and now my stories are in a book, Lady MacGyver. Lady
MacGyver, which we have sitting right here. Tell us about the origin of the title, because I think you speak about it a bit in the book.
Yeah, so it comes from, and you're probably too young, MacGyver, the TV show.
I have watched The Simpsons, so I am familiar with the concept.
Yeah, he's a legend. Basically he could fashion whatever was required from belly button lint, chewing gum and a paperclip. And I grew up with that sort of mentality. My grandfather had a shed with, and he lived suburban Sydney, with, bits and bobs, never threw anything out and could always fix or repurpose something for something else. And I used that in my general aviation days leading up to getting enough hours to work for an airline. So having to fashion repairs and systems for fuel and oil delivery to aircraft, not really legal, but they worked.
Well, I won't tell if you won't. and I'm sure none of our podcast listeners will tell either. Right. So for those who haven't been long-time listeners, the story of how you became interested in aviation is quite a fascinating one. Can you share that with us?
Sure. So showing my age here, back in the late 70s, early 80s, OH&S was a little looser than what it is now. And my father was in the RAAF based in Malaysia, and colouring in competitions for children of service personnel. The prizes were flights in aircraft. So I was good at colouring in between the lines, and so won lots of flights in Hercules, Caribou, Chinook, and even a Mirage III fighter jet.
How was the fighter jet? Because you were what? How old at the time?
I was 7.
7 years old in a fighter jet.
Yeah.
I know that RAF is looking for recruitment, but
yeah, it was great. So it was a trainer, but as a 7-year-old, it completely blew my mind. It was better than any roller coaster ride still I've been on. And when the pilot leaned over and put my 5-point harness on and told me, do not touch anything. Pretty good advice. It just felt like I was pushed back in my seat, the G-forces, as we were flying to the moon. And then that weightlessness, as you tip over and screaming back down to earth, me literally. But, I thought, this is amazing and this is a job. And plus I saw all the pilots, which I suppose reminiscent of Top Gun the movie, they were treated as demigods. And to my naive mind, it looked like they were just doing the same sequence of buttons. And I thought, well, I can do that. So, yeah, why not?
Anyone can fly a plane.
Absolutely.
Not everyone can land one.
Look, any landing you walk away from is a good one. And if you can use the aircraft again, it's a great one. So.
Exactly. And so you set your mind to, at first, being an airline pilot. And I think you say in your book you got some questionable advice from your guidance counsellor in high school on the subject.
I know. The worst thing is that I believed her. I was smart. So from the age of 7, I thought, right, I'm going to be a pilot. And I told everybody, that's that joke, how do you know there's a pilot in the room? They'll tell you. And so I was going to be a pilot. And come year 10, my career advisor, when I sat down to work out my subjects for year 11 and 12, she asked me what I wanted to do. And when I told her pilot, she laughed or scoffed and said, Michelle, women can't be pilots. And when I asked her why not, she explained that men and women were built differently. And it's like, yeah, not sure where she was going with this. And then she said, every time you fly, you're going to have to wear a tampon. Otherwise, your guts will fall out. So, yeah, questionable.
Particularly since women are flying just fine flying in the cabin.
Well, I'd been on flights because Dad was overseas, most of my life. And nothing happened there. And I can say nothing's happened.
Only a matter of time, you'd have to think.
Yeah.
And so instead of becoming a pilot at first, you had a fascinating series of careers. Can you go into a bit of detail about those?
Yeah, sure. So when I asked her, well, what should I do? My career advisor said, well, you're good at colouring in, and I'd won those colouring in competitions. So I went to art school and I got a degree in visual arts. Then got married straight out of uni and moved to a cotton farm in northwest New South Wales. I then studied a master's in archaeology, which I didn't use. I used on one job. Which
I believe ended up with a shotgun in your face.
Yeah. So he threatened to shoot me. So I left that.
Of course, you used your whip to yank the shotgun out of his hand.
Yeah, no, that's Indiana Jones.
It's easy mistake to make.
Yeah, that's right. And so then I was working at TAFE. I was teaching art because as an artist I was starving. So I needed to earn some money. So I was teaching art and then moved to the Big Smoke of Tamworth, where I met another woman at an OzTag training that was learning to fly. So it's like, okay, dreams back on. But yeah, in that I was...
And her guts didn't fall out.
Her guts didn't fall out. Although the most stupid thing I have ever said, I did ask her what she did about the tampons. So, yeah, she thought I was an idiot. But, the good news is my dream was back on.
And so you tried to go to the bank to get a loan to earn your pilot's license and did not have a lot of success at first?
No. So the first bank in Tamworth, I went in and asked for a loan to learn to fly, and they said, again, women can't be pilots. So
because your guts will fall out.
No, they didn't say that one, but it was just not an option, and they thought it was a frivolous reason for borrowing money. So I was no longer that 15-year-old who said yes to my career advisor. So went home, thought, okay, not what would MacGyver do? I think that now, but I thought, okay, how am I going to make this happen? Put on some pearls, put on lipstick, went to a different bank and asked for a loan to decorate my house, which they gave me. So I'll just go with their narrative.
And instead you sold the house and moved to Sydney.
That's it.
And that is where you started learning to become a pilot.
At Bankstown Airport, yes. Pro-flight aviation. It was back then. It's I think it's still around, a different variation of, yeah.
Well, we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a bit about the early days and the progress of Michelle's career in the aviation industry. All right, welcome back. You're listening to the Australian Aviation Podcast. We're here with Captain Michelle Huntington, the author of Lady MacGyver, and someone who long-time listeners might remember was on the podcast back in 2019. So, Michelle, you've just moved to Sydney. You're studying to become a pilot at Bankstown Airport. You've rocked up. You're ready to go. How did those first days go?
Yeah, you've read the book.
I have read the book, but our listeners haven't.
No. So I'll set the scene. I'm now 28 and
You don't look a day over 27.
Oh, thank you. So 28, my very first flying lesson. I had been for, 21 years wanting to be a pilot, it being my dream. Finally had the money, got the money from the bank. Not quite enough, so sold the house, sold my car. My young son and I moved back in with my mum in Sydney, and I paid for all of my flying lessons up front for 12 months flying. Turn up day one, more piloty than any pilot who's ever piloted
You had
before.
all the equipment.
All the gear, no idea. That was me. Yes, I had, apart from a hat, I didn't have a hat. I did have a bomber jacket.
That's the mistake. You should have got a hat.
I know. I had epaulets even, and I was not even flown a plane. So I turned up and walking across the tarmac looking like I was about to command a 747. Instead, getting into a little Tomahawk or a Trauma Hawk, she was nicknamed. And that first lesson we took off, and it was effects of control, which are straight and level, turning, climbing, descending, just the basics. Halfway through, I started to get that feeling, your tummy starts to churn, you feel that cold sweat, your mouth is watering. And I turned to the instructor and said, I think I'm going to be sick. And he said, well, I don't have any sick bags. You're going to have to wait. And I don't know if you've ever been sick and been told to wait, but it doesn't really work. So I said to him, no, I'm going to be sick. So then he instructed me to loosen my tie, undo the top 3 buttons of my shirt, and then to vomit inside my shirt, which I followed his instructions pretty quickly. And at some stage, though, he leant across and moved the boom from my headset out of in front of my mouth, so he didn't hear it in stereo. And then after I'd finished, he told me, do your shirt back up, readjust your tie. And we kept going for another 10 minutes or so, flying lesson. It was warm initially, yeah.
And after you came back down, how long did it take you for you to live that down?
Oh, look, my instructor, who I keep in contact with still, he still gives me curry about it. But I then proceeded the next 2 lessons to also throw up, and then questioning my career choice of, have I just given up everything and got this huge loan, no financial parachute, and I can't even keep my breakfast down.
But you got over it?
I did.
Clearly you've got over it. Because
I did. After that 3rd lesson, so the CFI, the Chief Flying Instructor, came out to sit in the aircraft with me because I was really questioning my choice and whether I'd made a mistake. And he said to me, just keep going until you can't. And I don't know, something clicked because he said, it's only vomit, like it's not going to kill you. And the next day it was great. I've never thrown up in a plane since.
But I think your mother took your solid advice to heart, didn't she?
Oh, she doesn't like it when I tell people this. Yeah, so when I went home that night
She's not listening.
No. When I went home that first night after the lesson, I told her, she asked me how was the day, and I told her what happened, how I was really feeling that it wasn't a great day. But she took what I'd done, what my instructor had told me to do, and she tucked it in there somewhere for useful information later in life. And she went out to Richmond Air Force Base and she was doing a glider experience. Anyway, the last circuit before she was coming into land, she started to feel sick, and she said to the instructor, I feel a bit queasy. And he said, oh, here you go, here's a bag. And she said, no, it's okay. I know what to do. My daughter's a pilot. And she proceeded to get her T-shirt and then vomit down the front of it, with the instructor questioning, what on earth is she doing? There's a perfectly good sick bag here. Anyway, the people on Richmond Road were looking at this older lady washing out a T-shirt with vomit.
So after those vomit-soaked early days in the Trauma Hawk,
yeah.
You were looking to get your flying hours up, and you just started doing ferry flights and positioning flights.
Yeah.
And one particularly long one, from what I understand from the book.
Absolutely. So I was after hours like everyone else. I had my private license, and building those hours can be expensive. I had paid for 50 hours in a Seneca one after I did my twin endorsement, but I still needed hours and was just asking, begging, borrowing anything for flying time. And an airport regular came in and he asked if anyone wanted to fly his plane, which we all were, yes, I will. And then he said, there's a catch though. It's in Arizona and you'll have to bring it back. And so I was like, yep. And everyone else put their hand down and stepped backwards. And it was when my instructor actually said to me, do you know what you've just signed up for? It's basically flying a little Hyundai Getz with wings from America to Australia. And I said to him, well, the engine doesn't know it's over water. And so I offered and did fly this small Hyundai, I guess it was actually a Bonanza.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, it was a Bonanza from Arizona to Torrance, where it was fitted out, up to Hollister, nice long runway there. We tanked it 750 kilos of fuel in a bladder in the back seats, or where the back seats were. A Christian pump, which I transferred the fuel from the bladder to the wing and then to the engine. I also had to fashion because the oil replenishment system, it's 13 and a half hours from Hollister to Hilo was my first leg over in Hawaii. So I needed to get oil. So I got a children's syringe, toy syringe, and would squeeze very slowly so the oil didn't escape into the syringe, which was a rubber tube, through the firewall up into the oil filler cap and held on there. Again, not that legal, but it worked.
And that would have been a trip that was hard on anyone's bladder, let alone a fuel bladder.
That's it, yes.
And how did that first flight go? Was it crossing fingers and praying for a lot of it, or?
Yeah. There were things that you read in a manual, and it's pretty easy in a manual, and you think, oh yeah, so theoretical knowledge is great, but I got to actually test a lot of that theoretical knowledge out with practical. So I flew through the intertropic convergence zone. I'd read about it in all my meteorology studies, and it was like, this is cool. I'm crossing the equator and there are the storms. I was flying under them. So, it was very good.
And so once you got all those hours from flying planes from all over the world into Australia, you became a flight instructor and a charter pilot.
Yeah, so I had my young son, and I was still living with mum, so I couldn't just go up to top end and up to Darwin or Northern Territory somewhere and build hours up there. So I needed something that I could get home most nights, and my mum was okay with looking after my young son. So I did instructing, and the great thing about instructing is that you actually, in order to learn something to teach it, you need to have a deeper understanding. So it was really good for me. I learnt a lot.
And you learned, I believe, how to not get killed when you're struck by lightning.
That's it. So one of the charter flights that I did, because as in aviation, it's who you know, not what you know a lot of the time. So one of my students decided he wanted to make a small fortune. So he started with a large one, and he bought a Chieftain and got his own AOC for a business. So I was his chief pilot. And we would fly from Sydney to Cooma and back a lot, ski season and also down for horse riding brumbies. So one particular charter flight, I took the family down to Cooma, and then I was coming back empty and took off, and in the cruise actually went into some cloud, which I thought was just like wispy cloud because I could see stars. And before I knew it, there was this almighty thunderclap and got struck by lightning. So lost my comms, lost all my glass instruments, still had some old steam-driven dials. And there was just this unbelievable roaring in my headset and St Elmo's fire across the windscreen. And it's something that came up, which I was so grateful for, and I actually use it now, and I try and tell as many people. One piece of advice he gave me back early on when I was a grade 3 instructor is, Michelle, you can either fly 1 hour 1,000 times or you can fly 1,000 separate hours. And what he meant by that is don't disengage the brain, actually fly deliberately and be conscious, and a conscious effort every time you do it. Because anything done often enough can become boring and you just kind of tune out. Have you ever driven home and, you can't remember how you got there because you were thinking about something else and you've done it so many times? He gave that advice, and I was so grateful because when I was in cloud and struck by lightning, I knew, because I'd flown that route a couple of hundred times, but each time I'd done it at different altitudes, slightly different variations of it, VFR, IFR. And so I knew where all the air traffic control zones were. I knew my lowest safes. I knew what my constant rate of descent was, my power settings, everything. So I could fly blind, and I popped out just over Camden. And then VFR back into Sydney, transmitting blind into Bankstown actually, rather than Sydney, transmitting blind, and landed. When I did, the police came onto the airfield and screamed up, sirens blazing. Do you realise? Because I gave a pan call as well, pan call, and they said, "Do you realise that the whole country's looking for you?" And I said, "Well, I'm here." They said, "Well, you've actually got to cancel it." I was like, okay.
So was that the most harrowing experience that you've had in the air, or have there been others?
Look, I've had a few. I've had engine failures. I've struck by lightning, severe turbulence. I've had a PILC, which is a passenger in lawful custody, go mental on the aircraft. It was on the 737, sorry. And I was a captain. He, had two undercover police with him, and he was going back to Mackay, and he just lost it prior to descent. And so the cabin was torn apart, and we had to do a quick emergency landing. When we did, an expedited, landing, not emergency. And when we landed, the police were there. And put it this way, when the rear stairs were put on and they went up the back to grab him because he was in the last seat, he didn't use any stairs on the way down.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and I understand you've had almost been struck by flying bottles of unmentionable substances as well.
Yeah. So that was a charter flight. My mates of my boss at the time of a different charter company, and it was meant to be an easy charter flight, not so easy on the way back. They were full of alcohol, been in the sun all day, fantastic, day at the races, and then they got a little bit childish with some alcohol under their skin and playing stacks in a Chieftain, and the autopilot didn't hold, and I'm having to manually do these huge corrections and yelling at them to, "Oi, sit down," and they're coming back with, "Ooh." And so, it finally, once a beer bottle skimmed past my headset and smashed across the dash full of urine, I thought, okay, I'm in a bit of danger here, and landed at Warnervale, had called the police, and they sobered up pretty quickly when they saw the police cars at the airport there.
I can imagine. So from those early charter flight days, dealing with, lightning strikes and urine bottle strikes, you finally became an airline pilot. You moved into Rex.
Yes.
How was that?
Rex was great. It was a Saab, I can just say, is like flying a big Chieftain, which is like flying a big Cherokee. And I loved the Saab, very capable. Unlike the Dash 8s, we could really fly it how we wanted to. Rex was a great company. The people were great. It was good. It was like the old Hazo days, but a little bit more professional.
And I suppose, in a way, because you mentioned in the book that, the Holy Grail was Ansett before that went under, I suppose you were flying with Ansett in a way, given that it was Hazelton and Kendall's remnants. Yeah,
and a lot of those, I think that was the mindset. It was still that really great culture. Everyone were friends, and overnights were fun. They were rare, but, there were 3 crew, and it was pretty tight. Yourself, the first officer or captain when I was first officer, and 1 cabin crew member, 1 flight attendant, and they were good. It was great CRM. It was fantastic. Mostly great CRM.
Mostly great CRM. Care to elaborate?
Yeah, one particular flight, there was a first officer who didn't like male cabin crew who were of a particular sexual persuasion, and they also didn't like female pilots, let alone a female captain. So he turned up, having been out the night before, and I'm not sure he actually went home. He did admit, we had a 5:45 a.m. sign-on, and he admitted he'd got home just after 5. He burped, and it smelt like he was still at the nightclub. And, after him falling asleep, and it was a very, very quick trip from Sydney to Dubbo. It was a really easy Saturday morning pairing, Dubbo and back, and then you're done. And yeah, he fell asleep a number of times, missed radio calls, just was not a nice person. And it got found that he was actually under the influence of alcohol. So he was offloaded.
Offloaded from the company, from what I hear.
Offloaded from the company, yeah. Initially offloaded in Dubbo and then, didn't come back into the company.
What was it challenging once you got those command strikes? Because, female airline pilots were still pretty rare at the time. I think not as high as they should be even now. But was it challenging being a female airline captain back in those days?
Look, you had to prove yourself. Well, that's how I felt anyway, that I needed to prove myself. So if you ask any other female pilots, they really do earn their stripes, so to speak, because you do the extra study, you make sure you are right on precision-wise, you know the regs, you know everything there is, because you're already starting on the back foot, unfortunately. There are policy changes coming out, and they have been for a few years, but still a little far behind as far as the culture catching up.
And so after Rex, after sitting in the captain's chair in the Rex Saabs, you moved up into the first officer's seat in the Virgin 737s.
Yes.
How was it working at Virgin Australia? Because it was it still Virgin Blue at the time?
Yeah, it was Virgin Blue. So Virgin Blue was like the fun airline. Richard Branson, Jeff Godfrey. That was their model. We had the camel colour slacks. Everyone looked the same. And it was a lot of fun. The cabin crew had their joke book, etc. So, and that was the attitude. Everyone was having a great time. Then Borghetti came across, and we became Virgin Australia, and a little bit more professional. Pilots actually stood out as being pilots rather than just the whole team thing, which we probably all have to say that we appreciated, because the previous management said, everyone's equal, which people we are, but as career-wise, pilots are generally in it for a career, and they're serious about it and they give their all. Whereas, cabin crew roles, baggage roles, ground staff, there are some, and not all by any means, who it's a transient job. It's something until the next thing. It's something to get to travel or to earn money before they go to uni, etc. So, we were treated well.
And I think it was during your time at Virgin that you had your journey with cancer as well.
Yeah. So I had twins. I went on maternity leave, had twins, and then when I came back, I was actually training to come back to line flying. So they put me through simulator training, like a refresher course, because I'd had 12 months off. And it was during the training after my Simex and then doing the line flying, I needed to get so many hours of line training up before I would be let loose again. It was on an overnight where I finally had enough time to myself and was in the bath and did a breast check, and which I'd been taught, when I was 16. And that's where I found a lump, and didn't have time to do, I had 3 days before my line check, my check to line, so that I could come back to flying. So figured I would put it off, then finally got around to doing it. And they determined that the lump was cancerous. So then had surgery and treatment after that, which Virgin Australia and John Borghetti were very, very supportive. The company was fantastic. They had a policy, and I'm not sure, I can't say they still have that policy. I've heard rumours they don't, where every pilot's sick leave, they would put a day in, and I can't remember how often, but basically there was a pool of sick leave so that any pilot who was sick, long-term sick, could use this pool, so they never were without pay. So they didn't have to worry about that. They could just get on to the business of getting better. And I was very grateful I was able to utilise that for 9 months. John Borghetti, after I spoke with him, sent out the breast check cards, the plastic shower cards, to everybody individually in an envelope addressed to their home, because it did have a diagram of a woman's breast. So, didn't want to cause embarrassment or anything, respectful of every person and what their background and their moral compass was. So it was great.
And because you were at the time, I think, one of the faces of Virgin Australia, because, as a prominent female pilot, you were featuring in a lot of ad campaigns and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was actually one of the campaigns that Come Fly With Me, Frank Sinatra. And I still had my curly chemo hair, which the people straightened because they thought I was a flight attendant. And then when I got in uniform, they're saying to me, this is the wardrobe department for shooting that ad. You're in the wrong uniform. It's like, no, this is my uniform. And actually, I had a very beautiful man come up to me. He would have been in his early 20s, beautiful, 6'4", gorgeous chiseled cheekbones and jaw, and he came up and he said, how come you're in that uniform? And I said, well, I'm a pilot. And he goes, well, I'd look so much better in that uniform. It's like, yeah, you probably would.
See, I am humble enough to admit that I would not. And so once you came back after your recovery, what did anything much change for you at Virgin?
Look, I came back and my hair was just growing back. It was like a number 2, I suppose, on my head. And again, John Borghetti offered me that I could change my uniform by wearing a scarf. The first flight that I did it, and I remember this Czechie, he said to me, why are you wearing a scarf? When I went in and sat down, shook his hand for doing my line flying, and he said, you look ridiculous. You look like a pirate. And I said, well, and I explained what had happened. I've had chemo. My hair's fallen out. I'm a little bit self-conscious. And he said, no, just look, take it off. It's fine. We're in the flight deck. Don't worry about it. I took it off and he goes, no, put it back on. So, yeah, look, I was probably more grateful to be there after having gone through that. I had my twins, but unfortunately my marriage didn't survive that. So yeah, it was nice to have the Virgin family there whilst I was going through that.
And it was during sort of that time and later in your career at Virgin as well that you came on the Australian Aviation Podcast.
That's right.
Yeah, how did you find that?
Yeah, it was great. It was Rob was out at the airport, so it was I think a day in the life of a Boeing 737 captain, and he got to sit in the pilot seat, and they got their aircraft photos, their engine photos. So yeah, a bit like on the front cover of my book.
There you go. And so you talk as well about another painful experience for you, which was the end of your career at Virgin, because it didn't end like you had maybe hoped it would.
No, I was, I suppose, you don't think about the end of your career necessarily because it was a great job. I loved it. And, water cannons and things, that definitely didn't happen. So, yeah, it was a flight, just going to be a standard flight down to Melbourne, and unfortunately something happened, which they'll have to read the book if they want to know. But basically it was a case of my whole career I felt like I had bent myself into what I thought they wanted of a pilot, and they being the industry and other pilots. And after this incident, I really questioned that, I'd given my all, I'd changed myself, and it wasn't enough. I was still, deemed not a pilot in their eyes by their actions. So I then removed these pilots from my aircraft. I was the captain on that flight, even though they were more senior than me. Removed them for the behaviour, and then, yes, the hell started.
Did what happened there? Because you talked about having the support of the Virgin family before, and it had helped you, and it had been a great company beforehand. Did that sort of shatter your perceptions of Virgin?
Look, I had personified the company I suppose it is just a company. It's the people in it that make it who it is and what it is. I was disappointed because I'm a believer in fairness and naively so, I'm sure, in some cases, but, doing the right thing even when people aren't watching. So I felt like I had been let down by this personified company, but it was more the individuals that let me down. So, yeah, I felt I gave everything, which again was silly on my behalf, but I gave everything to that job, but it was not reciprocated. I was just a number.
Did you get a lot of support from other individuals within the company?
There were some friends that definitely supported me, and my union supported me. But it's funny. It's a bit like a divorce, where the friends that you had as mutual friends, sometimes those friends either pick a side or they just go away completely, which kind of happened.
Well, we're going to take one more quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a bit more with Michelle about her career after aviation and what it was like and what she feels it is like for female pilots today. All right, welcome back. You're listening to the Australian Aviation Podcast. We're here with Captain Michelle Huntington, formerly a Virgin, has now released a book called Lady MacGyver about her life and career. So, Michelle, life after aviation. What did you start to do after you left Virgin?
I probably didn't handle it so well after I first left. Like initially when I left, it was COVID lockdowns. Like many others, I drank way too much and did online shopping I couldn't afford. But I also had that thing of completely melting down because I wasn't actually going through like the death of a career. It was more that my ego was dying because I was completely attached to that image of being a pilot. Like walking through security, not having to wait in line, getting, like most pilots are tight asses and, so getting discounted coffee at the airport and things, didn't get that anymore. So, and also, not being able to go to work. It was a little heartbreaking, but my kids reminded me that rather than focusing on what I'd lost, focusing on what I'd gained, which was my body wasn't subjected to different rostering, different shifts all over the place. I could wake up in my own bed most nights if I wanted to, most mornings, if I wanted to, and just being able to appreciate. So one of my favourite things was an early morning flying. I loved early morning flying and seeing the sunrise. The thing is, I can still do that by getting up early and going for a walk and seeing the sunrise. So it's it's just perspective has changed.
And you've moved on to being a motivational speaker. You've written a book. You've done all these other things. You've got your own podcast, which we can't recommend because it is competition. But
there's no competition.
Yeah, how's that been for you? Sharing your story like this, and sharing your learnings.
Yeah, it's been great because if you can, life happens and things never go according to plan and there's ups and downs, and it's really it's your choice whether you keep in that pain and keep that story loop happening about and being the victim, or you look at it for the lessons and you move on. So being able to write down the stories, I had a lot of fun. There were over 400 stories initially that I wrote, and we culled a lot. But when I was writing them, it was really bringing back good memories, and even the times that weren't so great, the stories that weren't so great, I have been able to put a positive spin and perspective. Everything that I did, even from year 10, my career advisor, to now, has given me something in my toolkit. So, I do not regret anything.
Some exclusive content for our listeners and viewers. What is your favourite story that did not make the cut?
Oh, you've put me on the spot here. Doing circuits at Tangalooma. I know you're not allowed to do that. It actually says that in the OSA.
We won't tell it.
No.
It's between
it
it's between
like
you,
I'm
me,
a rule
and
breaker.
the internet.
It sounds like I'm a rule breaker. Again, some of the one of my favourite flights, which didn't get in the book, was I flew to Queenstown and stayed with some friends, and it was spring. It was still cold. But going up, one of my friends loaned me his 180, and I went up at Queenstown by myself early morning because I was scared of the turbulence. I had my private licence, and it was so smooth and calm, and I was flying next to the glaciers and felt like I was able to just reach out and put my hand through because they were so clear, that blue. It was the closest thing, if you believe in, a higher realm and gods and all the rest, it really felt like it was just me, the plane and nature. It was amazing.
And you talk about this acronym that you have in the book, SOAR. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's basically it came from, when anything happens in aviation, it's recommended that you sit on your hands first. So it's stop, because quite often the instinct is to react straight away, to do something. Now, depending on how you're feeling, where you are, is your take on that situation at the time. Think about if you've got a text message from someone and you're in a bad mood, how are you going to read that text message? Like, they're just words and you don't know how they were intended, but your mood at the time is how you read it, you interpret it. So again, if you can stop, then you stop that knee-jerk reaction to react. And then observe. So not only observe what it is, but observe yourself. Like, what's your lens at the moment? How are you looking at this? How does it affect you? Is it actually a problem, or is it something that was just a shock, or something that came out of left field, doesn't really affect you? Then adjust. And so if you need to, make a change, small change, the 1 in 60 rule. 1 degree in 60 miles, you'll be 1 mile off, 60 miles off. And so it's just that, it's very simple. Stop. So it's like aviate, navigate, communicate, ANC. I use SOAR. And so then stop, observe, adjust, and then, look at it again.
And so the R stands for?
I can't remember.
I believe you have in the book, it stands for RISE. Let me just check
there we
here.
go. I knew it was a word that was just in there to make it an acronym. So RISE just means, okay.
Yep,
be
here
better.
It is, RISE here.
Be better.
236.
Yeah. So it's just be better. So the three things are SOA, which I could have made a SAO, I suppose, as an acronym. But then I don't know if that has...
You might have had the Arnott's people on you for that, I'm not sure.
True. RISE, it's a bit like that, Yeah, RISE, be better from it.
And so what would you say, looking back as your career as a woman in aviation, what would you say was the biggest thing that you learned from that?
Look, representation is really important, because my own journey, meeting a woman who was learning to fly when I'd been told no, was representation that I needed at the time to believe that, yes, it is possible. So women in aviation, any minority in any industry, representation is so important. And then, start with the basics. So actually be good at what you do. Enjoy it. Don't do it just to push against the man. And I don't mean the man as in literally a man, but the system. The system. Don't push it. Don't do it just to push against the system. I can do it. I'll show them. It's more do something you enjoy, and if you enjoy and have passion in it, one, you're representing. Two, you're showing that it's fun and it's a viable option for any person, and then, the fact that you've got this skill because you are passionate, you put everything into it, you're doing 1,000 hours, not 1 hour 1,000 times. Okay, at the moment, underrepresented. However, there are more coming. It is changing. So who knows? Hopefully in 10 years' time, it's a something that we used to talk about and we don't talk about anymore.
Well, you say, you mentioned in the book, I think you say it's not about being a female pilot or a male pilot, but a damn good pilot.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's not about being an aviatrix, which, in fairness, is a cool word.
It is.
It's the X. It's
yeah,
the X at the end,
it is the X. Yeah. Yes, I agree.
And you've talked about representation. You can't be what you can't see. Do you think that airlines have been doing enough to address the issue of the boys' club from observing from the outside since you've left?
Look, the thing is that time will get rid of those guys. They're dying off, which sounds terrible. They're leaving the industry, retiring. And I think with new management coming through, there are a lot of women going into higher roles that have influence, which is great. But underlying it is the culture that needs to change. And I think with a lot of pilots coming through, male and female, they've got amazing parents who are my age. Potentially your age, although you don't look old enough to have children. But
thank you.
Hopefully, if you do have children, that you'll also, it's that one, the fairness, which I really still live by, the fairness, doing the right thing when no one's watching, but also that if you've got, it's inclusive. Why rule out 50% of the population from a role because of how it used to be? And even like back in the day, women flew. It's just they weren't seen to fly.
And a bit of a spicy one for you, a bit of a curveball. Your former colleague Deborah Laurie, she has said that quotas, like gender quotas in aviation, are sort of counterproductive or unnecessary. What's your take on the issue?
Quotas. It's unfortunate that they are around and are, I suppose, needed, because it should be that it just be natural. However, the positive with quotas, and that used to always be the dirty, like how people would slag female pilots off. Are you a quota hire?
I believe the term now is DEI hire.
Yeah, that's right, which is meant to be a slur. And it's like, no, I'm not. But then I realised that I was, by defending, no, I'm not, I myself am putting down DEI or quota hires. It's not. Those pilots still need to perform to a minimum standard to enable to get the job done, because insurance, why would you hire a particular group of people if they're not going to perform how you want them to? But, and legally and safely. But if there are more people around, again, representation of minority groups, then they become natural to see. So it's less of a, there's a chick in the flight deck in the cockpit, rather than, it's just, there's two females today, or there's one, or there's two men flying.
Isn't that, you have a term in the book, don't you, for a cockpit manned by two women?
I have asked people about that, and I've got some very spicy answers back. Yeah, so if the office at the front of the plane is called a cockpit, then when two female pilots fly, it could be referred to box office.
Could be.
There we go.
And so when you're speaking to our listeners now, there's probably out there a few women in aviation, or maybe women looking to get into aviation, who are watching you now and watching this podcast, hopefully. What would you say to them as your number one piece of advice if you are a woman who is wanting to get involved in this sector?
Oh, keep going. Keep going until you can't is a mantra that my, again, chief pilot told me. But look, keep going. Your skills are required. Your skills are valuable, and you are valued as a pilot. It's just know your boundaries. And I don't think I had the script or the confidence, self-confidence in order to maintain my boundaries when I was coming through. But I think, again, that's a generational thing. These days, people appear to be more confident in maintaining that boundary. So, stand up for yourself and keep going.
And a very important question for young women looking to get into aviation: how do you keep your guts from falling out?
I don't know how to answer that. They don't. I can tell you, medically and from personal experience, they do not fall out when you fly.
Okay, well, you've heard it here first, exclusively on Australian Aviation. Your guts do not fall out when you fly, no matter what gender you are.
True.
So, Michelle, your book, Lady MacGyver, Unbelievable Stories with Altitude, where can our listeners find it?
Everywhere. So it's on Amazon, it's on, you name it. You can get it online, you can Spotify, it's ebook. It's also, I self-narrated the audiobook if you want to hear my voice and my really bad singing in one part. Yes, it's everywhere.
Well, we'll have to look out for the really bad singing. But thank you very much, Michelle, for coming on the show. We've really appreciated you having here an extraordinary woman with an extraordinary career, with an extraordinary book that is out now. That's about all the time we have for the Australian Aviation Podcast today. I'm Jake Nelson, and we will see you next time.